Hello, Petal. How are you doing? How's your week been? How are things going? If you want to leave a comment, you're more than welcome. Got some lovely chats going on in the comments section, and everybody's an absolute bean. I'm so lucky to have you guys. I can't even. And I know I say it every time, and you must get so bored of me saying it, and I'm really sorry if you do, but, you know, I show appreciation where it's due. Appreciation? I don't know. So this week's been a bit of an odd one because 1 minute they're saying, oh, there's going to be this big polar blast and it's going to be freezing cold and you've got to get 12 foot of snow. And like this morning I woke up and it was like, snowing will end in a couple of hours. And I was looking out the window and it was bright sunshine. I was thinking, well, it's a bit parky, a little bit cold. Not very snowy though. I don't know. You think with all this technology and meteorology, which I am an avid cloud watcher and weather watcher, and there are some websites that I look at where I follow storms globally and weather systems globally. Yes, I am that much of a nerd when it comes to weather. But it's like you follow these things and then the actual reports on the weather reports, they're slightly misleading. So never go to the big media. Go to your weather service. Anyway, that's my waffle for the day. It's like, weather, me. How terribly English of me. It's the English pastime to talk about weather. Anyway, this has been going on for a bit too long this morning. Oh my goodness. So, thank you for being here for chapter 13 of May Contain Traces of Magic, J.W. Wells and Co. Book 6. It's a shorter chapter today, but it's okay because it's kind of like it's the calm before the storm. See what I did there? Kind of tied it. Anyway, I'm sorry. But if you do enjoy listening, please hit the like button. If you want to share and subscribe, awesome. If you just want to hit the notifications bell, fab. Anything you do is a big help for the channel, and I always love it when we have a little bit of banter as well. That's always lovely to see. So, do you know, I normally don't talk more than a minute. And it's now 2.5 minutes, so I better crack on then, hadn't I? Chapter 13. Honest John grinned at Chris. An effort, since his chin was resting on the table. It meant having to lift the whole head. Where's the rest of you? Chris asked.
Lying down,
John's head replied.
On your bed. I find long journeys very tiring these days, thanks to you, arsehole,
he added. The shock was wearing off, and Chris wanted to sit down. Come on through to the living room, he said.
Funny man.
What? Oh, I see.
You'll have to give me a lift,
John said.
Unless you want me to wake my body to come and fetch me. I warn you, though, it might get a bit stressy with you. I'm basically the forgive and forget type, but the rest of me's not so laid back.
All right, Chris said. How do I?
Not the hair, John said. Probably best if you went into the kitchen and got a tray.
So Chris did that and carried John's head into the living room and balanced it carefully on top of the TV set so it would be more or less at eye level when he was sitting down. Now then, he said. Can I get you anything? A drink? John sighed.
What do you take me for? A potted plant?
Sorry, presumably nothing to eat then either.
No, but if you wouldn't mind going next door, in the top pocket of my body's jacket you'll find a packet of small cigars and a lighter.
John sighed.
It's the only real pleasure I've got left, and so long as I smoke 'em while I'm not connected to my lungs, completely harmless.
Put like that, Chris couldn't really refuse, but he opened all the windows and turned on the kitchen extractor fan. Right, he said, as he sat down, and John took a long drag at his cigar. To what do I owe the pleasure? Smoke seeped disconcertingly out of the base of John's neck, where it rested on the tray, making him look a little bit like a Christmas pudding.
I was a god once, John said sadly. Well, as good as. I was a supernatural entity at a time when there weren't all these rules and regulations. All you had to do was whip up a thunderstorm or make the sun go dark and humans would worship you. It was great. Try that nowadays, your feet wouldn't touch. Now look at me. They call it progress.
He sighed, sending billows of blue smoke in several directions.
It's bad enough being demoted from the Lord of the Ravens to running a poxy shop in the armpit of the universe. This...
He wobbled his head from side to side, making the tray rattle.
This is too much, and I'm not standing for it.
You're not standing for anything, John.
Very witty. Ha, bloody ha.
John's one eye blazed at him, and Chris decided to rest his comic muse for the remainder of the interview.
Demons say they can stick it back on for me, John went on. I didn't reckon it was possible, thanks to your bloody illegal pantocopt. But they seem to think they can do it, and right now I'm prepared to try just about anything. But they want something in return.
Chris frowned.
Something I can help you with, John?
The head nodded precariously.
Apparently.
I find that hard to believe, Chris said slowly.
It's all over, isn't it? The Civil War and all that? Don't ask me, I'm just the messenger. Anyway, they told me to tell you. It's nothing heavy. I just want to ask you a few simple questions. Board of inquiry, something of the sort. Just an hour or two of your time. They'll glue me back together, or whatever it is they've got in mind.
John's face creased and folded into what was presumably meant to be a smile.
You won't mind doing that for me, will you? No skin off your nose. And I'd really appreciate it.
Board of inquiry.
Something like that. Mad keen on the old red tape, demons.
On the face of it, reasonable enough. But, on the face of it, Jill and Karen had been human beings. Appearances deceive. No offence, Chris said.
But why you? Sorry?
Why did they choose you as a messenger? I mean, wouldn't it have been simpler to write me a letter or something? John's head shuddered slightly. His face frowned, then assumed a look of frustration. Chris realised it was because John had tried to shrug and had found out he couldn't.
How should I know? They came to me and said, do you want to do this little job for us? And in return, we'll mend your neck. Naturally, I accepted.
Fine, Chris said thoughtfully. Only, in that case, why come to you to come to me instead of just calling on me direct? Seems a bit elaborate for a species that hates wasting energy.
I'm sure they have their reasons,
John said, a trifle impatiently.
Meanwhile,
I'm interested, that's all, Chris said. Come to that. Why did they enlist you the first time? In your shop, I mean, when you flushed me down the... He broke off, suddenly mesmerised by the glaring inconsistency dancing before his eyes.
I have absolutely no idea, John said wearily. Why don't you ask them yourself when you get there?
I'm asking you, Chris replied. Tell me about it, such as how did they contact you? What did they say?
Can't remember,
John mumbled.
I get these gaps in my memory ever since you cut off my head.
Try. John sighed.
All right, he said. They came into my shop, all right? It was soon after poor old Bob Newsom got killed, so when I saw them I was shit scared, naturally. They told me what they wanted done, and I didn't argue. Yes, it wasn't a very nice thing to do, shoving you down the bog, but it was you or me. That's all there was to it.
Something not quite right. Something obvious. Is there anything you aren't telling me, John? Chris asked. Because if you're playing funny games with me, I swear to God I will make you regret it. You may have noticed I'm not quite as limp and pathetic as I used to be, and I've still got the pantocopt, and I reckon eternity will get to be a real drag for a bloke with no arms or legs. As Chris said that, he listened to himself saying it and wondered, when did that happen?
When did I start getting a kick out of making threats? Not a very nice thing to do, but definitely fun, watching John squirm. Memory to self, cut that out before you stick like it. Look, John said wretchedly, are you going to help me out or not? I reckon it's the least you can do, considering.
Chris sighed. Sorry, he said, but there's something smelly about all this, and I'm not... Arms clamped around Chris's chest, crushing the air out of his lungs. As he was lifted out of the chair into the air, he saw the grin on John's face. Served him right for sitting with his back to the bedroom door.
I'll get you for this,
Chris wheezed as John's body hauled him towards the bathroom.
Salami, you hear me? Only if you come back,
John replied.
Hence my total lack of panic.
Chris was swung round as John's body shouldered the bathroom door open. He tried struggling, but he might as well have tried to stop an elephant by throwing peanuts at it. He looked down, saw the toilet beneath him expand like a mouth opening. He raised his knees and kicked frantically as John's arms let go and he was falling. It's all right, Chris told himself as the tiled walls flashed past. Any second now, a hummingbird will zoom out of nowhere and everything will be just fine. He fell. Then he fell some more. After a while, falling just got boring. He wished he'd brought a book to read. But he hadn't. So he thought instead. He thought, 3 guesses where they're sending me. Now, do I believe John when he says it's just some board of inquiry, or do I assume there's something rather more sinister going on? Unknown at this time. Come along, little hummingbird. The further you let me fall, the further you'll have to lift me up again. Was it his imagination, or was he falling faster this time? It was, Chris realised, possible to gauge his speed by counting the interval between the lights mounted on the walls. 2 seconds. Pity he hadn't thought to do that the last time, or the time before. It felt like he was falling faster, but there could be any number of reasons for that. Besides, don't things fall at a standard speed anyhow? Galileo and cannonballs and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Should have paid attention in physics. Too late now. Slowing down? No, not quite. At some point he realised he stopped falling down, and now he was falling up. There was a circle of light directly overhead, tiny but growing fast and oval. Reckon we can hazard a guess as to what that'll turn out to be. Still no hummingbird, but he was definitely decelerating as he rose up into the oval glare. It was so bright he had to close his eyes, and when he opened them he knew exactly where he was, and when, to within 10 minutes, give or take a minute, he stuck out a foot, like someone getting off an escalator, balanced on the toilet seat and hopped awkwardly down, taking care not to crash into the cubicle door. Well, 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 Chris thought. Now we are again. He glanced at his watch hopefully, but both hands were missing. Fine, he thought. Be like that. He unlocked the cubicle door and peeped round it. Nobody there yet. Hello, he said. For crying out loud, she sounded angry and nervous. Keep your voice down or someone will hear you. SatNav? Shh! She thundered in his ear. And don't look round. You mustn't see me. Why not? It's bad luck. What do you mean? Like at weddings? Quiet! Defeating the object of the exercise there, Chris thought. But to humour her, he lowered his voice to a whisper. Is that really you, SatNav? I thought you were dead. I saw your body. There was blood. Quiet, she hissed back. Your friend Jill murdered me in cold blood, robbed me of my physical form, reducing me to a mere voice trapped in a plastic box. I suppose she told you all about it. Well, yes. Well, no, actually, because SatNav wasn't a demon, was she? She said you were a dissident ringleader. No, scratch that. She said she mistook you for a dissident ringleader. He hesitated. That's not true, is it? Hoarse, unhappy laugh. No, SatNav said. It isn't. I'm not even a demon. She murdered me just because of what I am, because she could. Basically, oh, she didn't tell you, did she? SatNav went on, about how the demons hunt us, kill us on sight. That's why we're practically extinct now, on both sides of the line. The stupid thing is, they won't even tell us why, whether it's for food or because we've got something they want, or because of something we said that pissed them off. We have no idea, but they keep on killing us all the same. We used to try and fight back, but it was pointless. We can't touch them, they're far too strong. And when they kill us, the bitch of it is that we don't die. If only. It's like being what you'd call a ghost, I suppose. A consciousness, a memory, a voice, if you're lucky. If you can find something you can talk through, a way of getting a foothold. I was one of the fortunate ones. After I'd been drifting for 10 or so years, I got caught in a metaphasic filter and stuffed inside a plastic box. Better still, my box sat right next to a radio and a CD player. When the right music played, I could just about come through. For a little while. A tiny bit of me. SatNav sighed, and Chris felt suddenly cold. But you know what? It's not the same, somehow. Not like having a body of your own, and 3 dimensions, and a life. She stopped talking. After a moment, Chris said,
I'm sorry.
He heard her draw in a long, ragged breath. There's a sort of vicious irony about it, she went on. The special gift of the Fae is to be centered immaculately in space and time, the way no other entity ever can be. You've heard of angels dancing on the head of a pin. That's us. We exist on a point of time and space so sharp, so precise, that nothing else could possibly balance on something so small, and from there we can see forever. You can't begin to imagine what it's like. The freedom, the sheer perspective. She fell silent again. He didn't like to interrupt. Humans have always believed, SatNav went on, that in dreams they can see the future. Well, that's us. It's our gift to those less fortunate than ourselves. In dreams we can show you where you're going and what's waiting for you when you get there. We like to guide people, steer them along the best course, avoiding disasters and pointing them in the right direction. It's how we give something back, for the pure joy of being us. And so, she went on, her voice cold and harsh now, when your friend killed me and I was drifting and I landed in the net, what did they turn me into? Well, quite. At the end of the road, turn left. No, not quite the same, not the same at all.
I'm sorry, Chris repeated. I wish there was something I could do.
Funny you should say that. A sudden stab of intuition. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly.
I see, he said. So it was you.
That's right.
It was you,
he said again.
You got Honest John to flush me down the toilet at his shop that time. You wanted. His head was spinning. It didn't make any sense. You wanted to bring me here.
That's right, SatNav said cheerfully. It'd save a lot of time and trouble, only she interfered. Still, we're here now, so no harm done.
Yes, but...
No, hang on a moment. He did understand after all.
And the second time, he said, in the park, with the ducks. You want me to?
Ducks?
There were ducks in the park. When I met Jill, she wanted me to see inside her mind, so I'd know she was telling the truth. But you hijacked me and brought me here.
Oh, right. Yes, perfectly true. Only, of course, that was really just a dry run, so to speak, so you'd see who poor Ellie really was, all along, so that next time you found yourself here, you'd know what to do. She paused, then added quietly, You do know, don't you? Chris nodded.
You want me to stop her?
I want you to keep me from getting killed. That's not so very much to ask, is it? Slight pause. Then, after all we've meant to each other. Meaning what exactly?
You want me to change history?
He said uncomfortably.
That's not allowed, is it?
SatNav laughed. Absolutely not. Strictly forbidden. Unbreakable rule. Prime bloody directive. The thing is, though, if you change history, you make it so the new version's what's always been, so nobody can ever possibly know. She made a noise. On balance, it could be described as a giggle, but only in the way a wolf counts as a dog. It happens practically every day, but unless they actually catch you at it, there's nothing they can do. Fait accompli, so you don't need to worry about getting in trouble, and you know it's the right thing to do. Well, don't you?
Do I?
Well, of course you do, silly. Haven't you been listening? Your friend murdered me in cold blood while you sat in a cubicle with the door shut and did nothing. It's your duty. Also, she added, her voice changing dramatically, you do like me, don't you? Just a tiny bit. That was very slightly more than Chris could take. He swung round, nearly bashing his nose against the cubicle wall, and looked at her. She was beautiful. Looking back afterwards, he could remember the stunning impact of her face, the most perfectly beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Details, though. Nose shape, cheekbone profile, chin geometry, even the colour of her hair eluded him completely for some reason. She frowned. I thought I told you not to do that, she said. Sorry, he said. And of course I like you. Sometimes I think you're the only one who's ever understood me, but she laid a hand on his forearm. It was light and thrilling, but he felt rather cold. Save me, she said, and then we can be together, just you and me, always. Chris's head was throbbing, as bad as a 9 pints and a curry hangover, though mercifully without the flatulence. But the demons, he heard his voice say. The Civil War. If I change history, there won't be a truce. That'd be rather selfish, wouldn't it? Chris, they're demons. They're inherently evil entities from another dimension who batten onto human pain and misery, not stray, bloody kittens. Pull yourself together and get a bloody grip, for pity's sake. She had a point there. Demons. Poor Mr. Newsom. And if he saved SatNav, Jill wouldn't grow up to be the dissident ringleader, and the demons would have no call to come after him, and poor Mr. Newsom wouldn't have his neck broken like a drink straw. And come to that, what about the dogs? If his actions saved just one duck life, surely it'd be worthwhile. Quite so, he told himself. And it'd be doing the right thing, and you and me together always was a really nothing to do with it at all. Really? Honest? Was it? You can cut that out right now, Chris said in a high but firm voice. I'll tell you what we meant to each other. You're the little voice that used to tell me how to get from Stourbridge to Bromsgrove without going through Kidderminster, and I'm the poor sod you think you can twist round your little finger with a sexy voice and a dab of glamour. And you know what? It's not enough. Screw you, SatNav. I'm not doing it. Not, he added quietly, unless you tell me the truth. There was a long silence, and maybe her face flickered just a bit, as though she was in need of tracking. Oh, she said, that odd thing. Well? She sighed, and the flickering stopped. Actually, she said, I have. Mostly anyway. Look, I'm sorry about the attempted seduction rubbish. I underestimated you, and I apologize. I thought you'd be a pushover, what with your girlfriend leaving you and everything. And, well, I'm in a hurry. I thought it would be quicker than convincing you by weight of rational argument. My mistake. Please forgive me. Ever take a step onto the moral high ground, only to find that someone's moved it without you noticing? It can be a little bit jarring.
All right, Chris said gruffly. That's fine. Forget it. Just be straight with me. Is all that stuff about demons and the Fae really true? Did Jill kill you just because of what you are?
She nodded. Same way you'd squash a spider just for being there, though you wouldn't, she added. You'd try and pick it up in a bit of tissue paper and chuck it out the window. You'd probably break 2 of its legs and crush its guts to squidge in the process, but at least you'd try, even though you're petrified of spiders, she said, which is dumb, but really quite sweet. That's a uniquely human quality, you know, sweetness, kind of an alloy of goodness and stupidity. We don't do it, and neither do the demons. She shook her lovely head, and her hair, golden, auburn, straight, wavy, curled, floated around her shoulders. Just do it, Chris, and then you'll feel much better, I promise. Trust me. After all, when have I ever lied to you? He groaned aloud. All these people who had never lied to him. I can't, he said. I mean, be practical. She's a demon, right? If I try and stop her, she'll rip my head off. Hardly. Sly grin. She's sweet on you. Oh, come on. Hadn't you realised? Talking of which, she added softly, there's other ways history will change if you save my life. Not that you'd allow selfish considerations to affect your judgment, but I just thought I'd mention it. In passing. It was a bit like the time he'd pushed open a door on top of which some merry fellow had balanced a large dish of cold gravy. What, you mean Jill and... Chris blinked, as though the thought was dripping down his fringe into his eyes. But she never fancied me. Ever. Humans, SatNav sighed. How you ever managed to reproduce with all your weird hang-ups beats me. Of course she did, only you were too shy and stupid to realise. Of course, I don't know if it had worked out between you if she hadn't killed me and changed the course of her life forever. From what I've seen of you, probably not. If you're so dumb that you never realised how she felt. But you never know. Anyway, like I said, it's a side issue, and she's a demon, don't forget, and we both know how you feel about them. The hell with that, Chris thought, as his whole life flashed in front of his eyes. Not the second best make to a muddle-through life he'd settled for all these years, but the marvellous alternative he should have had. Jill and Chris, the perfect couple, so much in common and their differences perfectly complementary, 2 people forming one ideal fusion. Well, maybe not that good, but a damn sight better than the other one, and consider Karen, a tiny voice added in the back of his mind. A fair old mess you made of her life while you were at it, and you owe it to her to put it right now you've got the chance. He looked at SatNav. Who are you? He said. She grinned. I like to think of myself as a dream come true, she replied. Or I should have been, but I never got the chance. Chris could hear voices. They were coming. He could make out their conversation, or else he was remembering it, the way you can anticipate the actor's words when you've seen the film often enough. Get in quick, she hissed. Come on. He thought, it can't ever be wrong to save a life, can it? Hang on, though, he said. What if you're wrong? What if she doesn't fancy me, or not enough to stop her doing what she came this side of the line to do? I could get hurt. It won't come to that. Get back in the fucking cubicle. Well, that he could agree to, at least. He darted back in and locked the door. Changing history, Chris thought. Saving a life, he thought.
Why the hell me?
He thought. Someone, he noticed, had written KH4CP in biro just above the toilet roll holder. KH, he thought. Karen Hitchens. Oh, shit. I've tried to get him to notice me, he heard Karen's voice saying, but it's like I'm just not there. You're overdoing it, he heard Jill reply. You're trying too hard. Just be yourself, act natural, otherwise he'll just think you're strange. I think he's got his eye on that new cow. What, Ellie? Hello? I don't think so. He was looking at her in RE. He's got to look somewhere. Yes, but I saw how he was looking at her. I hate her. She's horrible. Any second now, and the door of the next cubicle would open, and SatNav would come out, and Jill would raise the... He heard the bolt grind as it moved back. Now or never, he threw open the door, nearly colliding with SatNav as he lurched out and found himself face to face with... Chris? Karen said. What are you doing? Jill was staring at him, disbelief, then anger. Then she looked past him and her eyes locked onto SatNav like a targeting system. I can't do this, Chris thought, then changed his mind and took a long step forward, placing himself between SatNav and Jill. Get out of the way, human, Jill said. Sorry, he heard himself say. Look, Jill, I can... Get out of the way! It occurred to him that SatNav might have been the one who'd misjudged the nature of Jill's feelings towards him. Right now they weren't difficult to interpret, and they didn't involve spring flowers, bluebirds, or little pink hearts. Time to run away, urged his better part of valour, but his legs didn't seem to want to move. Jill, Karen was saying, what's going on? Why are you... Jill wasn't listening. She had that perfect stillness that raises the hairs on the back of your neck, the stillness before the spring. Oh, Chris thought. Oh well. And then, somehow, his hand was in his jacket pocket, his fingers closing round the tape measure. He was pulling it out, fumbling the blade out of the casing, and while he was doing it, he remembered the last time he'd been here, seeing a tape measure in Jill's hand as she stood over a headless trunk. His tape measure. He remembered now. A memory of something that was just about to happen, remembered by someone from a different altered future. She'd been about to jump him. He'd drawn the pantocopt. She knocked it out of his hand, pushed him out of the way, used the pantocopt to slice off SatNav's head. A memory of what was about to happen. What had happened. What had happened. Jill was looking at the pantocopt. Clearly she knew what it was, possibly a moment's doubt, maybe even fear, but quickly swept away by resolve. Chris thought, if I can remember it, then it must have happened this way. That must be where she got the murder weapon from. She took it from me, but I didn't have a pantocopt when I was 15, therefore I must have been here before with it in my pocket. This must be, I must already have done it, he thought. Changed history. I must have been here before and done it and then forgotten or been made to forget. So everything's already screwed up. All my fault because he heard SatNav in his mind. Quite right, she said. A demon can't kill a fae with just claws and teeth. She needs a weapon. You provided it. It's all your fault. Now do what you have to do and we can all go home. Jill was looking at the blade of the tape measure, thinking, making calculations. Chris kept perfectly still, not breathing. Jill, Karen said. Then Jill made her move. It was beautifully elegant, pure predator, the crouch and the leap, all one fluid action. She leapt at him, just as he remembered her doing, and he remembered how she crashed into his left shoulder, spinning him round so she could disarm him with a lazy swat of her hand, grab the pantocopt, shove him aside and strike the killing blow, perfectly clear in his mind, as though it just happened, so naturally. He took a step to the right. Jill sailed past him, missing him by a clear inch, crashed into the cubicle door, smashed it into Western barroom brawls splinters, nutted herself on the toilet, swore loudly, jumped up, crouched and got ready to leap again. Chris couldn't remember any of that. He was on his own. Jill, Karen was yelling, for God's sake, what are you doing? Hold still, said the voice in his head. Just hold still. Jill leapt. Chris held still, not through conscious choice, but because she moved too fast for him to react. As she came flying through the air at him, he thought, she wants to watch out. The blade's in the way. She could do herself an injury. She did. She hit the blade, and it cut her in two, starting with her nose, neatly bisected lengthways, right the way through to her spine. Half her body shot past him on either side. Chris heard the thump as the two halves hit the floor. His mind went completely blank as his hands let go of the tape measure and it clattered to the concrete floor. There, SatNav said. Now that wasn't difficult, was it? Karen was staring at him, her mouth perfectly round. No sound coming out. This is silly, Chris thought. What I just saw can't really have happened. I can't have cut Jill in two down the middle. And then he thought, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Quick! Karen had grabbed his arm. She was dragging him into a cubicle, shoving the door shut on him as though trying to close an overstuffed suitcase. Just get in there and stay quiet, she said, her voice deadly calm. It was self-defence. I saw it. She stooped down, grabbed the tape measure, folded it away without even looking at the blade and shoved it in her pocket. It's all right, she said. I'll get rid of it. Just stay in there and remember, you never came out. You didn't see anything. Just leave it all to me and it'll be fine. Chris tried to speak, but Karen shut the door in his face. The last thing he saw as the door swung towards him was a pair of pretty but strictly forbidden by the dress code earrings Karen was wearing. Enamelled, silver, in the shape of hummingbirds. Not so long ago, if asked what travelling by tube meant, Chris would have said it was what commuters did in London. Not anymore. He emerged from his own toilet like a dolphin leaping after a flying fish, landed awkwardly on all fours and banged his head on the edge of the bath. His bathroom, more or less as he'd left it. That came as a relief. He couldn't have changed history too much if his bathroom was the same, and since it had been painted and decorated by Karen, that implied that the change hadn't edited her out of his life. He got onto his hands and knees and saw a pair of tights drying on the radiator. History had changed. He grinned. Either she was back or she'd never left at all. Didn't particularly matter, just as long as she was here, in residence. The surge of relief took his breath away, and he thought, so I really did love her all along without knowing it. Just as well, really. Splendid. The door opened, narrowly missing his head, and a voice said, What are you doing on the floor? A voice. Not Karen's, but familiar. He looked up. Angela, the trainee, in a white fluffy bathrobe with her hair all wet, was looking down at him. Do you wear contacts, then? She asked. What? No. Oh, only you look like you've dropped one and you're searching for it. What the hell are you doing here? Chris said. But Angela just grinned. Relax, she said. My train's not till 7. Plenty of time yet. Plenty of time? Time for what? She was smiling at him. Plenty of time, the smile said, for all sorts of things, including but by no means limited to doing a week's ironing or playing a game of Scrabble or something. It occurred to Chris, with something of the force of a cave-in down a mine, that Karen wasn't the only person in the world who wore tights. Oh, well, he thought. Angela. He sat up on his heels and looked at her. This is probably going to sound strange, but I seem to have lost my memory. I must have slipped and fallen, he added, proud of himself in spite of everything, and bashed my head quite hard, which would explain why I'm down here on the floor. You poor thing. Are you all right? Are you feeling dizzy? Chris shook his head, which rather spoiled the effect. No, he said, but I really and truly have lost my memory. Do you think you could just sort of remind me? Remind you of what? Everything. Angela sat down on the edge of the bath. You're sure you're okay? Not sleepy or nauseous or... Fine, she added, as he shook his head again. I was just a bit concerned, that's all. Honestly, you humans are so fragile. You humans? Remind me, he said hopefully. Please? Oh, sorry. Right, how far back do you want me to go? Chris shrugged. Start right back, and I'll let you know if I want you to skip a bit. All right, she said. Well, in the beginning the earth was without form and void and God. Skip, Chris said. Take it from when we first met. He'd said the right thing. Angela blushed. It was your boss, Mr. Burnotts, who brought us together, she said. He arranged for me to come on your round so I could see what it was like as part of my practical work experience. We hit it off straight away, and pretty soon we both knew it was more than just, well, you know. So you told your girlfriend. She moved out 6 weeks ago and I moved in. Ring any bells? Fine, he said. When did I find out you're Oh, straight away. I told you the first time we had dinner together, before we... Got you. Right. Was I, funny about it? Angela shrugged. Not really, she replied. I was impressed, actually. It was one of the first things I really liked about you, not like the other guys I'd met at all. Ah, but you were absolutely fine about it. I said something like, before we go any further, I really think you ought to know I'm not entirely human. And you just shrugged and said, fine, as a matter of fact, neither am I. And then we both laughed and we talked about it for a bit and found out we got so much more in common than we originally thought, and things just went on from there. If she'd reached down Chris's throat and cut out his tongue, she couldn't have shut him up any more effectively. As a matter of fact, neither am I. Oh, shit. Can you stand up? Angela was saying. Only, if you've had a nasty bump on the head, maybe you should go and sit down. Chris smiled feebly and nodded. She helped him up, and he tottered rather unsteadily, not acting, into the living room and dropped into the armchair. Angela knelt down beside him and put her hand on his arm. How's that? She asked. Any better? Much, he replied, carefully not looking at the coffee table beside him. You couldn't get me a cup of tea, could you? Of course, Angela said. Won't be a tick. Kettle's just boiled as it happens. As soon as she'd gone, Chris leant forward and scooped up the object lying on the table, the object he'd been at such pains not to stare at when he'd entered the room. How they'd got there he had no idea, nor did he care. At that precise moment, however, Frank Slade's special sunglasses were exactly what he needed. The nearest mirror was in the bathroom. He hobbled over to it and looked at himself. Chris Popham. No oil painting, but exactly the same as he'd been last time he'd seen himself. All right, that was the easy bit. He stuck the sunglasses onto his nose, closed his eyes, turned his head back towards the mirror and opened them again. Oh, he thought. Looking back at him, with a very sad expression on its face, was a demon. Bet you weren't expecting that then. Well, depends if you've read the books or not, but if not, then ta-da! So, I think there's either one chapter left or maybe 2 chapters left. How many chapters is left? We've got 2 chapters left, so 14 and 15. So we'll be doing those in the next couple of days, and then it will be the next book. Yes, which is escaping me at the moment for some reason. I don't know why. Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Sausages. Woo! That'll be book 7. And then that'll mean that in line with the 8 Reindeer of the Apocalypse, I can never say that word, Apocalypse, we will be complete of the J.W. Wells series for now. So yes, the next one we'll do is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Sausages, but we have still got 2 chapters left. So hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any of the chapters that we do. Don't forget there's a playlist of Ink Reads Tom Holt It'll be it's under podcasts or playlists. I can't remember which one. I also do Robert Rankin as well, who's a legend. And there's so many other playlists too, from Roald Dahl to George Orwell. I have very diverse tastes. Yes, so I'll stop whiffling for now, and I will see you in a couple of days. And look after yourselves, have good rests, eat good food, take it easy, and look after yourself, Petal. Oh, and that was something else. Another thing that came up, I'm sorry, before I forget. So I've got this thing, which I've done for years and years and years and years and years, and it was so funny to see it in the comments section. But it is the Ivor the Engine thing. And one of the things I remember most of all was Ivor the Engine started went into the station. Boop, boop. Hello, Ivor, said thy station. But it's a bit weird. It doesn't kind of work with my accent. Yeah. You boo, you pew, Bonnie McGrew, Costrop, Doodle and Grub. I think that was what it was. At least not doing the Banana Splits theme. The Dickies version of it, which is one of my favourite tunes of all time. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent now, so I'm going to go, and I'll see you in a couple of days. Take it easy, Petal. Look after yourselves. Bye.